Right.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's get started. We're here for the 5th Congressional District primary. Unfortunately, the incumbent has not chosen to be with us today, so we'll start with State Representative Bynum. Please introduce yourself, state your party affiliation, tell us the geography of the district for people. We know it, but people who are watching this video may not.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm Janelle Bynum. I am running for Oregon's 5th Congressional District as the Democratic nominee. The district travels from a little bit of southwest Portland around Lewis and Clark and captures a little bit of southeast Portland around Reed College, Milwaukee, Sellwood, Happy Valley and North Clackamas, then goes down essentially I-5 and picks up, and 205 and picks up West Lynn and Lake Oswego, then goes down. It mostly stays, if you're looking at a map, it mostly stays on the right-hand side, meaning the east side of I-5, and goes down to about Junction City, and then takes a, I call it, violent turn into central Oregon and picks up Deschutes County, which includes Bend.
Okay. Tell us a bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? When did you move to Oregon? Those kinds of...
Sure. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I'm the oldest of 3 children, and daughter of 2 school teachers, granddaughter of a police officer and hotel maid. I moved to Oregon in 2002 with my husband, who grew up here. We moved here right after September 11th, and I came thinking that I would be able to work as an electrical engineer, which is how I'm trained, in the semiconductor industry, and that did not work out. Everything kind of dried up and went home. So for the last 20 years, I've worked in our family business, which is McDonald's, and for the last 8 years, I've been a state legislator.
What part of the family business did you work in, or have you worked in?
I am a certified owner-operator, so I've done every job in order to get my degree in hamburgerology. And I have done a lot of the back office work as well.
Okay. And how many restaurants do you and your husband own?
They own us 4.
Okay.
We have 4 children and 4 restaurants.
Okay. Do your children want to go into the business?
Depends on the day. Depends on the day.
Okay. So you've, as you alluded to, had a legislative career in Salem. This is a
I
tough
call it service.
service. This is a tough seat in any year. Why are you running for Congress?
Well, I thought I was retiring from lawmaking. I feel like I had driven a lot of success in the legislature, had worked on reproductive health equity bills, equal pay. I was the chief sponsor of the Oregon CHIPS Act, which was basically investing $200 to $300 million of public funds into the semiconductor industry, and it is expected to generate now $43 billion in economic activity for our state. So that was a huge labor of love and something I'm very proud of. And then during the George Floyd time, when this nation, I think, and our state was, having a reckoning, was able to lead a bipartisan set of bills, along with my Republican colleague, Ron Noble, and the entire legislature through the passage of 23 police accountability and civil rights bills to make sure that everyone, to make sure that we had the best and brightest serving us on our force.
If there were just one of those 23 that you would pull out and say this is the most meaningful bill either to Oregon or to you personally as a legislator, which would that bill?
Doxing.
Okay.
It would be the anti-doxing one, and because the original request came from a Portland police officer who lived right behind me. I remember walking to his house and talking with his wife, and he was very concerned that during the protests that people were finding out where they lived and following them home, or harassing their family at home. And so so I went and sat on his back porch with his wife and talked about, what she needed. And they were my constituents, and I stood up for them. And that was a bill that was helpful to law enforcement. It was also helpful to people who were exercising their constitutional right to free speech, and they were getting doxxed at their jobs. And so I think that was like one of the all-around best bills that touched a variety of people in the community.
Right. Brett, please introduce yourself. Tell us your party affiliation. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then why you run.
Yeah, my name is Brett Smith. I'm the independent nominee for Oregon's 5th Congressional District. Something that I like to beat the drum on is representation. I feel like there's just a lack of it. I don't see Congress as representing just like the everyday person. And the House specifically is designed for representation, right? It's supposed to be of the people. Like, that's what the House is for. But if you look at it, it's not. If you look at the statistics, there's like 36% of people who register as non-affiliated. Like, I'm non-affiliated. I'm still not a member of the Independent Party. They just nominated me. So that's why I'm running. I feel like people need somebody who actually like lives in the district, for example, and like, not to beat up on anybody or anything like that, but like neither Dreamer or Bynum have like even live in the district. Everybody who lives in the district who's currently running for this office aren't invited to like the debates, which are going to happen tomorrow. The criteria that that they set out, which haven't been publicized or anything like that. I personally only had 2 days to meet. I was only on the Oregon registry as an actual candidate for 2 days before everybody agreed to the debates. When you take like the preliminaries or the primary elections, and the Republican and the Democrat get to run for this office for months, and then be like, oh, it's for the primary election or whatever. And then the third parties get to eventually run, and then we have to meet these criteria that just, aren't fair. And again, it's just not representative of people who live here.
Okay. Tell us a bit about your background. Where did you grow up? How'd you get to Oregon?
Yeah, so I've kind of been all over the place. I was born in Barstow, California. I grew up in Hinkley, California, my youth, the Aaron Brockovich thing. During that time, so like my friends and family were poisoned and killed and like all this stuff. When the money was given out for all that, like they drew a line in the sand and was like, here you go, these people get money, these people don't. My family we didn't meet that criteria. So
have you had health effects from that?
Oh yeah. Like I have like tumors and stuff like that. But like medical care for like an average person is like, even right now, I haven't been able to really work because according to the FEC, if you're clocked in, you can't do any campaigning. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a conflict of interest. Right. So like I haven't been working, so I don't have even access to healthcare right now to try to do this. Okay. But yeah, I've had negative health effects because of it.
How prior to starting the campaign, how were you making your living?
I'm a welder and a pipe fitter by trade. I was doing some consulting for like fire life safety stuff at RSG. It's a mill in Molalla. That's what I was currently doing before I decided to run. The whole reason for me running is, I advocate for my kids to vote, to participate in the system. And this is kind of a put your money where your mouth is. And I think it's very important that people can see somebody come from nothing and get to a position like this.
Okay. What's your educational background?
I'm not college educated. Everything that I've done, I've taught myself. I'm an inventor. I hold several U.S. patents. Something that like I'm really trying to harp on right now, and it's wild that I can't get traction on it. First of all, I have a medical device going through the FDA that's being funded, right? Like I'm waiting for that to go through. But I created a system that can pacify an active shooter. And I'm trying to get people to see this and to look at it, because we sit here and we debate about things like legislating guns away, and then you got pro 2A people and anti and all that. But in the meantime, if you look at like Gresham, these kids walk out because there was a gun brought to school, and kids just feel so neglected, and we fail them, like just as a generation, like parents, faculty, whatever, news, everybody, we just failed our kids, right? So I'm presenting this idea, like this tangible, real world solution that can be done, because it's like how I approach problems, right? Like I'm able to do these things. And as far as like education goes, like that's like I've taught myself the patent system, right? Like I wrote my preliminary patents and then presented it to people and investors. So everything I know, I'm just self-taught.
Okay, great, thank you. Representative Bynum, you talked about the package of bills that you brought after George Floyd, and I know that you worked with Representative Noble on a lot of those, or all of those. Could you give us an example of a time when you have stood up to powerful Democratic interests and not voted with them or voted against them at some cost to yourself? Either you got yelled at, or people took away endorsements, or took away contributions, or whatever. We're looking for some indication of your independence, because as you know, this district is very evenly balanced between Republicans and Democrats.
I mean, most recently, actually, I'll point to a really fine example. It was the legal, or how do I say it? It was making sure that drugs weren't permissible on public transit. And that was a really hard bill for a lot of...
Was that part of 4002?
No, it was separate.
Okay.
It was broken out separately, because I remember...
Okay.
It was a difficult conversation because some people were concerned about people sleeping on the terminal stations, and criminalizing people on buses for their addiction. My position was that I believe children should be able to ride the bus freely, especially during the summertime, and we should have a community that has boundaries. And boundaries include not doing drugs on buses and trains. And I think a lot of this generation, so I have kids who are 14 and 16, and I think a lot of their youth is less robust because they're not out exploring the city. We've had challenges with our transportation system, and that was that was a lot of discussion. Like I'm not allowed to say what we talked about, necessarily in our caucus, but that was, I think, there were a few of us that felt strongly.
How did that bill go? What happened?
I think they worked out some sort of compromise on in the last days of it, but I don't think it went as far as it needed to go. So it's...
How did you vote on 4002, which recriminalized some?
I voted affirmatively.
Okay. I guess same question for you. I mean, you haven't served in public office, but I wonder how you would.
Yeah. So, like the benefit that I like to tell people is that I can offer leverage if I was elected, right? Like I'm not beholden to any party, and I have no interest in doing that. I tell you about being poisoned by a major company as a kid, and that drove me into such extreme poverty. I moved out of my house when I was 16. I was homeless for a while. So you see like these homeless people on the street, and like I get it. Like I understand how you end up there, but we've created this system that's it's kind of smoke and mirrors. Like if you look at our economy right now, our economy is booming, right? Like it's doing well. Yet the people who struggle day to day, especially people who live off of minimum wage, even like an Oregon minimum wage, can't afford like basic commodities like they used to. So when people tell you that the economy is doing better than it ever has, yet like my adult children can't move out of my house. And it's not because they have good jobs. My daughter's a CNA. My son, he works at Columbia Shipping, and he's working his way up. And this is an average job, but like he makes a decent wage. He should be able to move out and live on his own. But that's not realistic. The idea that it's even feasible is ridiculous. And then we have people arguing about like what the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do about certain things, and you know that they're going to toe a party line regardless. You know, I'm so bitter. Like, this isn't fun for me. Like, this is, like, I'm super nervous right now. It's so far out of my wheelhouse, out of the normal thing that I do. But I believe so strongly in it because I think somebody needs to be in there who can say no. With impunity, say no. Like, that idea is ridiculous. Where does it even come from? Because you see examples of this, you know, from the Republicans and the Democrats all the time. You know, and it's just towing the party line. And it has such a negative impact on society, and I don't believe that the parties themselves, not even Ms. Bynum, I think she seems like a fantastic person. This isn't a personal judgment, but I think these parties just are incapable of solving the problems anymore. They just don't have a vested interest in it anymore. When you look at it, I mean, the RNC and the DNC are literally businesses, private corporations. Right? Yeah, we let them have primaries like they're a part of the government. And they're not. You know, so like if somebody came to me and just wanted me to toe a line, like I would be in a position to have leverage and be like, what's in it for the 5th district? What's in it for our people? Like, what's in it for us?
So, we see a lot of candidates come through this room, a tremendous number of candidates in the primary and the general, and I guess my question for you is, this is one of the most hotly contested congressional races in the country, going to be tens of millions of dollars spent. Why not run for the legislature? Why not run for county commission? Why not run for, it's like, I love to play basketball, but I wouldn't think I could start in the NBA. I would, start in a rec league.
When I first, there's a guy I worked with, one of the nicest men I've ever known, super devout Catholic. And he was the first one I told that I was considering it, and he asked me the same exact question. He was actually like, how about like city council, man? And it's such a fair question, but I'm just gonna go back to like this representation thing. Like you can't shut the door on people, especially in the House. It's literally the House of Representatives.
Right.
Not the House of Attorneys, not the House of Business Owners, not the House of any of that.
Yeah, it's the people's house.
Right. And I believe that, I don't even believe that, I know that I am of the people. Like, I live here, I work here. This is such a normal thing.
Yeah. Representative Bynum, over the weekend, Fox News published a story. I'm sure you were unhappy about it. Just for people who may not have read it, the story, in essence, accused you of failing to fulfill your duties as a mandatory reporter relating to an alleged sexual assault involving a campaign staff member in the 2022 cycle, not this cycle. Could you respond to that story, please?
Sure. I took it personally as an attack on my reputation, and I did report to the employer as expected and complied with the investigation that's at the Legislative Equity Office, and I'm happy to continue complying. I think when people report something, you should take it seriously, and I always have. I'm a mom of 4, and I wouldn't want anything to happen to any of my kids, and someone would, ignore a report about them. So,
well, can I just ask you? I think maybe the common conception of the mandatory reporter law is that you report to authorities, not to the employer. Because in this case, the employer, Future PAC, is the campaign arm of the House Democrats. They're not a law enforcement agency. They're not really anything except the campaign arm of a party that you belong to, and so they would have very little incentive to get to the bottom of whatever you might have reported, and in fact, they might have some incentive not to get to the bottom of it. So shouldn't you have reported whatever your concerns were to law enforcement or to some higher authority?
I believed I did the right thing, as what was shared with me was sharing what the concerns of one employee about another. The depth of that was for Future PAC to investigate and they assured me that they would. So I think I'm 100% sure that I did the right thing.
Okay. If this situation were to happen again in this cycle, would you do it the same, or would you do things differently?
Well, I don't have Future PAC
You have
anymore.
campaign staff. If you had a campaign staff
so,
about whom somebody raised concerns, would you do it the same, or would you do it differently?
I think so. The reporting structure matters. So if I have I think there are employees of the DCCC that work on the campaign. I'd still report to them, but I think every situation is different, right? Like hindsight is 20/20,
Sure.
and all of the details are different every time. Of course, if something rises to the level of needing some immediate, some very, very, if something is a very, very serious concern, sexual assault, absolutely, you report that. But every situation is different. Right?
So you wouldn't have reported to law enforcement? If it were happening,
We're speaking in hypotheticals.
Yes, we're speaking in hypotheticals.
If I'm required to report to law enforcement about a sexual assault, I would absolutely report to law enforcement, and I have.
Okay.
In other
okay.
situations.
In
yeah.
this case, as I understand the complaint says that the issue was sexual assault.
I don't understand. I don't understand it the way that you may understand it.
Okay.
And I believe I did my duty appropriately and reported it.
Okay. Great. Do you have anything to say on that matter?
Yeah, I've been a mandatory reporter as like a school bus driver, and I was the maintenance director at a healthcare facility. And I can appreciate the scrutiny you guys are giving Ms. Bynum here, but sometimes you might not get all the information, and you're reporting your chain of command as far as reporting is that structure. So I can't attest to what her chain of command as far as who needed to be reported to, or if she did or didn't.
So let's turn to the 5th District. You've been out knocking on doors and talking to voters. What is the top issue that people are wanting you to make a difference on?
So healthcare, leading with reproductive health care, comes up time and time again. The environment, particularly wildfire resilience and recovery and prevention. And then, the economy and making sure that we're standing up for working families across the district.
So you've named 3 or 4 issues there. You haven't said anything about public safety or homelessness. So are those less top of mind? And because the district is less urban, of course, than Portland.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying people have a standard that they want. I worry too when my kids go out the door every morning to go to school. Like every parent worries. And so I think there's a certain benchmark for the level of safety we expect in our communities. So I do think that it is always important to keep it top of mind. But what people will tell you on the doors is what I just shared with you.
Okay.
And you get that organically. What some people choose to make an issue and what the average Oregonian tells you are 2 different things, and I think that's what's happening in this race.
Okay. The incumbent Representative Chavez de Rimmer isn't here. You know her well. You've run against her twice. Could you just offer? I want you to offer 2 things. I'll tell you. I'll ask you the first thing first. So what difference would you point to? What do you want people to know? You 2 have relatively similar profiles in some ways. You're from the same part of the state. You've run against each other a couple of times. You're both from the Happy Valley area.
But worlds apart.
She's pretty moderate. You're pretty moderate in many respects. So tell us the big differences.
Well, I think her politics, I think it puts people at the very end of it and politics at the very beginning. And so what I've proposed is putting people first. She's a part of a regime, I would say, in Congress right now that can't get its act together, from voting 15 times to elect a speaker to not really putting issues of substance on their agendas. They're not moving any big policies. They're not working with the president. Even, look at FEMA right now and having discourse back and forth about what Americans need. The hurricane presented a perfect opportunity for people to put politics aside, and yet you see politics creeping in. I think the other difference is that I am about an agenda that is moving our country forward. So I have a track record of moving the CHIPS bill, like I said, $300 million in investment, $43 billion of economic activity. No legislator can say that they have generated that much economic activity like I can.
Well, we haven't seen it yet. We hope we'll see it.
Well, I mean, put it on
Yeah,
the table.
yeah,
But I saw what happened
Yeah.
when I came here. I experienced that. Like you're talking about working people, average people. I felt being unemployed but having 2 degrees.
Yeah.
That's real. It's just as
Yeah.
it's like you ask kids to check all the boxes and then you've got nothing for them.
Yeah.
So we're talking about moving things forward.
Okay, so you're talking a lot about the Republicans in Congress. They're whatever 240, whatever the
Whatever the
435
number is,
divided by 2 is. Let's focus more on your opponent, because I do think people are looking for
There are multiple opponents.
Your principal Republican opponent, the incumbent, she's everybody's opponent on this side of the table. I'm not hearing enough specifics about how you're different. I know how Republicans and Democrats are different, but I'm not hearing how Janelle Bynum and Lori Chavez DeRima are different.
So we're talking about moving policy, not just talking about policy, actually moving policy. Number 2, Roe. There is an absolute desire to codify Roe and not to turn back the hands of time. I went knocking yesterday and people, 2, 3 women told me, Roe, 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 in a row. That is primary. Seniors have told me, Lori Chavez DeRima has voted 26 times to overturn Social Security. They're not having it. One lady in Albany told me that she secretly wished that her son would build a mother-in-law unit. Why? Because her Social Security wasn't even keeping up with her rent. So we're talking about making sure that housing is affordable and that we preserve Social Security. We're also talking about prescription drugs and negotiating those prices so that people aren't choosing between their meals and their life-saving drugs. That is the agenda that I'm moving forward with. Lori Chavez DeRima has had 2 years to move an agenda and doesn't have much to show for it.
Okay.
I have more to show for it in the 8 years that I was in the legislature and more to come.
All right, my second question is, can you say something nice about her?
I think she loves her daughters. And mother to mother, like that's a bond that women around the world have. When you love your children.
Okay, great. So I looked at your website. You've done a lot of interesting things. You've got some inventions. Your inventions are not also clustered in the same area. So what's the common thread? I think you have a medical device. You have this active shooter device, and I think you have another sort of
desalination one.
Yeah. So what's the common thread between?
So the medical device, my son has cystic fibrosis, and it was just a need that needed to be met. You know, he would have to take a ton of medications and then do like chest physiotherapy and be just kind of plugged into a wall for hours at a time, things like that, and be hospitalized, be hooked up to equipment all the time. So what I did is I just turned all of that stuff into like a modular unit.
Oh, that's that little pack he's wearing when he's out.
Yeah, like when he's like, I got a little video like when I'm throwing the ball. He's actually doing his treatments, and like, and even still, like, there's no other kids with that disease that can do that while they're doing their treatments.
I'm surprised you haven't been able to commercialize that.
It's actually being in the process. I have an investor, Greg Orman. He actually ran for Senate in 2014 in Kansas. He's actually working on getting it through. That's who's funding all of he paid for all my patents,
Yeah.
things like that. And it's just the FDA is a real
Yeah, it takes a while.
yeah,
Takes
to
a
get
while.
through. But it's always based on a need.
Mhm.
And the water thing, I tell you about PG&E and like contaminated water, and like that's like a very real thing that's happened to me. So I focused on the water, and then the school shooting thing. My wife asked me, and she goes, "Well, what would you do about it?"
So
what would you
just,
do now?
I'm sure it's very complicated, but give us a very quick pitch on how this works.
It's not very complicated, honestly. I think if you were, I bet you Miss Bynum would look at it and just be like, I can't believe nobody's done this yet. Like it's super simple. I don't want to go into details with it
Okay.
until I have some paperwork
Okay,
pushed through.
that makes sense.
Because
All right.
then it
All
would
right.
be
Protect your
Okay.
finger.
right
All
in the public sphere.
All right.
But I'll give you a little synopsis. If it can detect a potential threat,
Uh-huh.
right, and activate immediately, I've got some code written in there to where a human has to be the deciding factor,
Yeah.
Before anything activates, so nobody gets hurt, lawsuits,
Yeah.
insurance, all this nonsense, right? But it does work,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll hear more about it, and we'll write a story about it.
Man, I always pose this to people. I did an interview with this independent network, and they're supposed to be publishing something about it. And he asked me, he goes, "Oh, do you want me to say anything about it?" I go, "Well, I mean, you're in a situation where, and especially the media, it's like you hear this thing, and it seems like it can be wonderful and it can be great. Wow, I wish we could do that, and I hope it works out for you, But it is a real thing.
Yeah.
And instead of just hoping it works out for me, like you can help me
Yeah.
make it work out for me."
Yeah. Representative Bynum, what's the biggest mistake you made in the legislature, and what did you learn from it? And don't tell me it was caring too much or trying too hard.
I always thought my kids were heavy. I always thought that they presented an impediment to me being effective, because it's hard to make friends when you have to go home at night, or you can't, I think I spent maybe one night away from my family in my 8 years, maybe 2. And so, I thought they were heavy, and I thought that they were holding me back from
Mhm.
being as great as I could be.
Yeah.
When in fact, when I finally started sharing the things that I was experiencing as a mom, like today, I just got an email from my husband asking the counselor, "Hey, can you help our son with his locker?" And I'm like, it's 4 weeks in, right? But there are probably a lot of parents of kids with special needs that need help. And I can start talking about that. And when I did start talking about that, when I did start talking about like kids with special needs, or the challenges we were having in school, or the challenges that we were facing when my daughter was trying to apply to dental school, and how much it was costing, and how much debt that she was faced with, or how she was picking a place to go to school based on where her reproductive rights were protected. When I started talking about that and leaning into that, I think that's when I became much better.
Okay. Did you ever take a vote that you wish you could untake?
There was one, and I try not to dwell on it, but there was one, and it was about, oh gosh, it had something to do, I wish I had tweaked it. I think it was with missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I think I wish I had pushed harder for, it was a bill to coordinate between the communities, the Native American communities and Oregon State Police. And I think in the committee hearing, there was a tweak that I probably should have pushed harder for and placed a no vote in order to get there. And then I think, as we talked in the last meeting about, was a vote on trying to make sure that the law applied to people fairly when they're accused of like sexual assault.
Mhm.
So
So how would you vote? What would you have done?
I wouldn't have necessarily voted negatively. I would have had a good vote to take in the first place. I would have been able to push the legislature to say, hey, before you bring this bill up, I see this gap here, and I think we should fix it. And they all agreed, but they wanted to fix it on the back end instead of the front end. So,
So any other questions? All right, we're out of time. Been a long day, and I'm sure it's been a long day for you guys. So we have one last question for you that we ask every candidate in this cycle, in every race, and that's, what were you best known for in high school? But
Honestly, I was kind of an outcast in high school. I was homeless, like I said, at 16, so not really the popular kid. I guess I was best known for that, and it was kind of a bummer. So I ain't got nothing good for you.
how long were you homeless?
About 5 years.
oh,
About that.
And how much of that time did you sleep outside?
About a year and a half, and then it was a lot of from place to place, and just trying to get back on your feet and figure things out. But when you're a kid, like a minor,
Yeah.
I remember having a buddy of mine forge some documents so I could work at like Arby's,
Uh-huh.
because you had to have like an adult say that you can work a job,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Representative, what were you best known for in high school?
I was the school mascot for a little while.
And I think I remember you went to school in Virginia, right?
I did.
And what was the mascot?
Snails.
What? Snail?
Snails.
Do you have any pictures?
No.
How's that like a profile?
The chant was "Go Go Escargot," and our like motto was like "Make haste slowly."
So
It's
were you a
Festina
cooked
Lente. Sorry.
Were you a cooked snail?
No. But it was, it was a girls' school. Sports at that time weren't really a big deal. Like they played soccer and lacrosse and field hockey.
Yeah.
But
Did you have
yeah.
a costume?
Yeah, it was like a soft situation that you velcroed on, and it was red and white,
Uh-huh.
and you would just wear a sweatsuit.
Any regrets?
No regrets. Like I'm a total sports mom, probably because of that experience. Like I'm not a super athlete,
Yeah.
but I am super competitive, and I'm a big cheerleader. So
Great. That's a great answer. We have not had many people who were snails in high school.
there we go. All right.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Be well.